everybody, and welcome to Brexit and what it means for Brits living in the EU 27. My name's Laura Shields, and I am the chair of Brussels and Europe Liberal Democrats. Whilst this event is called Brexit and what does it mean for Brits living in the EU 27, actually I'm going to conflate this. What this is really about is about what Brexit means for what I'd say 4.3 million bargaining chips, so 3 million EU nationals living in the UK, and also about 1.3 million Brits living in the EU. And we don't want to be played off against each other. So this is why we're doing a joint event tonight. There is a hearing, which Sophie, who I shall introduce more in a moment, is going to talk about tomorrow in the European Parliament. But tonight we very much see this issue in parallel. You know, that what happens to EU nationals in the UK and what happens to us should be very much tied together.
Because what we're not hearing, it's the impact on the mental health of millions of citizens. We've got loads of examples, thousands actually, of testimonies, people explaining. A lady said that it feels like being in an abusive situation, that I can't get out of that situation. And somebody actually said on the 23rd of June, I became an alien, and that's why EU citizens are having this issue, because it seems that after that vote, we became a bit disintegrated from society, and our survey shows that more than 44% of EU citizens no longer feel welcome in the UK, and that's a big issue that needs to be addressed.
I think, and I'm concluding, we need to redefine the dialogue there. I mean, this isn't a negotiation. I think the EU has taken the right step, has taken the initiative. It has come out and said, rights, they are our top priority. This, I think, is not part of the negotiation. This is basically telling the UK, these are our conditions. You have to recognize the rights of EU citizens, otherwise, and you have to pay the bill, otherwise there isn't going to be a negotiation. If we can declare that, in a little bit more strongly, if we can be that through a unilateral recognition of rights or the ring fencing, I think we will have made a very important step in the direction of protecting the rights of EU citizens.
Thank you. So separating them out and seeing it as a human rights issue.
Yes, absolutely. Okay. There's a very important human rights element there that we tend to forget.
Thank you very much.
So the ring fencing of rights, I think that's, clearly that is something that we need to put first, and we're going to discuss it tomorrow at the hearing. We'll be talking to Guy Verhofstadt as well, and really push very, very hard for this, because I think also as a tactics this is important, but also to make sure that people get some certainty quickly, that they don't have to wait, because what you said about the mental health, I mean, that's something that struck me when I was reading all those testimonies, thinking, I would go crazy. And it's, you don't really want to get to a point where somebody gets so desperate that they're going to do something desperate.
Well, we have example of people feeling suicidal.
Yeah, exactly. No, but that's if you read it, you can understand that. And this is in the hands of governments and the European Commission. It's not something unavoidable. It's not like the weather. It is a choice that they have. So we'll keep pushing them to make the right choice. Then,
I said earlier that the negotiations have been delayed by this ridiculous election, and what is so annoying for me is that the people who were most affected by the vote at the referendum were denied that vote. The European citizens in the UK and the European British citizens in the rest of the EU who are over 15 years, and the 16 to 17-year-olds. So that is what's so distressing. And we're ending up with in the UK, the government is in absolute chaos.
Dimitrios and Samia, welcome to the European Parliament here in Brussels. I understand that later on today, you're going to be speaking ahead of the Brexit negotiations about guaranteeing the rights of EU citizens in the UK and the rights of UK citizens in the EU. Could you both tell me a little bit more about this, please?
Yes, if I may start. There is a very important legal argument, in addition to the political and moral argument, for the recognition of the rights of EU citizens, be they in the UK or Europe. And I will be arguing in particular, and that's a collaboration between New Europeans and the Britain in Europe think tank, which is based in London, at Brunel University, I will be arguing that we also need to focus on Article 8 of the European Convention on Human Rights, the right to private and family life, and in a way the fact that these rights are non-negotiable. All member states in the European Union are bound by the European Convention on Human Rights. So in many ways, here we're talking about a negotiation with rights that cannot be negotiated away. We should keep this in mind. I mean, there's very important guarantees there.
As far as I understand, the EU in particular, represented by Juncker et al., is saying that there will be no forward motion on negotiations until something is put on paper concerning what exactly it means for UK citizens in the EU and vice versa. Do you think this is the way it will go, Samia?
Well, we think it is positive that the EU recognises the importance of preserving the rights of EU citizens in the UK and UK citizens in the EU, who are the most at risk of losing a number of benefits. But what we're saying that really they should take a step further and make sure that the citizens' rights should be a precondition to the start of negotiations. Because as my colleague said here, those rights are not negotiable. These are exceptional circumstances. There are no rule books per se. It's down to all parties to make those rules. So let's take a bit further, and if we do mean that citizens' rights come first, not only should they be prioritized, but they should be the first condition before any start of any negotiations.
Do you feel there is hope for a compromise, for a suitable deal to be reached, both of you?
We have had positive signals both from the UK government and from EU institutions here who are willing to engage with citizens and groups of represented EU citizens. So I think there is the right commitment, and maybe it's difficult, there's a reluctancy to make the first step, and we are here to bridge that gap, because when there's a will, there's a way according to us. But they're going in the right direction. They accept that those rights are a priority and fundamental, so let's go a bit further than that.
I would very much second that. I think EU is of critical importance that in the Brexit guidelines, the rights of EU citizens have been set as the top priority in these negotiations. I would go as far as say that the UK government, Theresa May, has been taken a little bit by surprise here. They were simply talking about the right to stay, the right to remain, and the EU institutions have come forward, taken the initiative fully, and are now saying that it's a complex matter. There is a number of different aspects of the rights of EU citizens that need to be protected and will be protected. And I think it is the right way forward, that this is a precondition. The negotiations cannot start unless and until we have a serious commitment from the part of the UK government in this direction.
The right of citizens living in the UK. The word EU is really a bad word, and usually people tell us the EU doesn't do anything about their concerns. So on behalf of the citizens, the millions of EU citizens that we represent, thank you. But these are exceptional circumstances. There are no rule books. We want the EU to take a step further. We need the EU to be extremely brave, ambitious and bold. And we believe that there's a case, a moral, legal and political case for unilateral guarantees to be given now to UK citizens who live in the EU. From a political point of view, this would put the UK in a very untenable position. And similarly as the Brexit bill, we believe our rights shouldn't be negotiated, and the rights of citizens should be a precondition to the start of EU negotiations. So we would look for EU institutions to consider the possibility of making those rules. Very quickly, over 44% of EU nationals in the UK no longer feel welcome in the UK. This is a great concern. There's an issue with community cohesion. Sadly, the UK government is doing nothing about it. But at local level, such as in regional level like London, EU citizens have been made welcome. So I'm going to quickly give you the recommendation in terms of improving the process of registration. We need clarity on CSI requirements. We find it unacceptable that there's a legal position from the Commission that our rights are being breached. There's nothing we can do about it, and there's no interim relief for EU citizens who are entitled to NHS and claim permanent residency. So we ask for Parliament to support and to put pressure on the Commission to explain what the interim position is for those millions of EU citizens. We want the UK to simplify their system and make sure that there is remedial action when claims are defective, and for the UK government to be proactive and to be providing the evidence. We also have evidence from UK citizens in the EU having problems, so we suggest that we look at harmonisations of those processes, because permanent residence is acquired and should not be, there's no need to apply for it. I'll pass the mic to my colleague.
You have about 4 seconds.
Very quickly follow this up by saying that the argument for unilateral recognition is also backed up by the right to private and family life as enshrined in the European Convention on Human Rights. And that is an aspect, the international human rights aspect of this debate, that unfortunately has not been picked up enough, and we must stress that the EU27 and the UK will be bound, are bound by the European Convention on Human Rights, and are therefore must give recognition to the right to private and family life as soon as possible, hopefully through the resolution that Guy Verhofstadt has made reference to. Thank you.
Thank you very much. That was the New Europeans, and now for up to